Okay. Good evening, everybody. It is Monday, April 22nd, and this is our last PTSA forum of the year. We want to thank you all for being here, especially to anybody who is celebrating Passover tonight. I really, really appreciate you being here. We have a few of our panelists who are, and I cannot thank you enough. This was on the calendar ages ago, and I just appreciate you being here. So that is amazing. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing this image so you can see all of us. So I'd like to introduce you all. We decided to try a panel this time. We've never done a panel before. We usually just have speakers that come and talk, and each talk at a time. But we thought it would be more interesting to have real life students, a parent who's been through it, and a couple of experts who go through this on a daily basis with families. And we're just going to have a panel. We're going to start off by having each of our students give their background, what they've been through. Then we'll hear from our other panelists. And I have some questions that some of you put in ahead of time. So I will start with those questions. If you have additional questions, please feel free to put them in the chat to me, and I will be the facilitator of the whole panel. If you have general comments to all parents to say, or to anyone to say, hey, that's great, or oh my gosh, this is such a worry, or whatever, feel free to do it to everyone too. I mean, I really want this to be something we can all participate in together. So I will start my introductions. Our first person that we have, I'm going to go through the introductions. I'll introduce all of you, and then we'll go back to you, Eloise, and have you start talking, okay? So Eloise Wilson is a senior at South Pasadena High School, and she is in the thick of this. She has gotten her acceptances, her rejections, all the feels of everything that's going on. And she's in the middle of just trying to decide what to do. So I thank her so much for being here, because I know this is a really tough time in life. So it's pretty awesome. So thank you. Our next person is Declan Swift. I will say he is my child. So a little forced being here. But he is currently at UC Santa Cruz. You can see how beautiful it is there in the trees. We are seeing the real life reality of college students. He has 2 roommates in what's really a double, but they put 3 in there. So he's outside. So he's going to try and keep his camera on, but the Wi-Fi isn't great. So thank you for being here, Declan. Our next one is Donovan Milroy. He graduated 3 years ago from South Pasadena High School. He'll tell you his story, but basically went to PCC and then has just transferred to UCLA earlier this year and has an awesome story about how he did that. Next is our parent in resident, Shauna Levin. Thank you so much for being here, Shauna. She contacted me because of a talk we did last year. If you haven't seen it, it's on our SPHS PTSA website, YouTube page, probably and website. And it also included Mosaic Prep, who are the ladies I'm going to introduce you to in a minute. But Shauna's gone through this as well, just like I have. And we just want information to get out there, because we know our kids are getting some stuff at school, but we're not always getting the information at home. And we want to make sure there's so much to know that we know we can't get to it all in an hour anyway, but we just want to give you more and more. And we know, especially junior parents have had a few talks recently by the counselors, which is amazing. But this is kind of more of a in reality, this is what we're going through. So she's here to give you a little bit of perspective there too. Our last 2 are Mariah and Patty from Mosaic College Prep. Let me add our little spotlights here. They are our resident experts. They work with families on a day-to-day basis, helping them deal with the craziness of college, what's changed. We wanted them here because they're amazing, but also because they know so much about current stuff that, especially, I went through this with Declan a year ago and my other kid a couple of years ago, but things change so quickly. So, we want to be able to answer your questions. So I'm going to pass it over to Eloise. Eloise, if you can give us your story, that would be great. And when you're done, we'll just send it back to me.
Okay, hi everybody. Just like Kristen said, my name's Eloise Wilson. I'm a current high school senior at SPHS, and I'm kind of finishing up the whole university application process right now. Um, and so just kind of like everybody else right now, if you're a junior, I began junior. I went to all of the panel or the meetings that the counselors held, and I took notes and things that you guys are doing right now. And then when it got to my senior year, I began looking at schools. I did a lot of research for programs and what I liked. And then I began working on the common application, probably a little bit later than I should have. But so I started working on that. And I would say for the Common App, what is really important is, and your counselors will tell you this, and your parents will tell you this, but from somebody who didn't really do this, it is really, really important. I would give yourself a lot of time to do it because you do not want to be put in a situation where you have like 2 minutes to get your application in and your computer won't load, because that happened to me like twice and it was not good. Um, so the number one thing I would say to begin with is when you start going on Naviance, when you start going on the Common App, I would really give yourself a lot of time. If you have certain schools that you like, the first thing I would do is find their application deadlines. They're going to have early application, or sorry, early action, early decision, and then regular decision. Based on what you want to do, I would write all those dates down for your schools. You can see that on Naviance. You can access that on the Common App. Once you add your schools, it will tell you the dates they are due. Um, and I would start immediately looking at the supplements. Even if you don't want to work on them right away, I would have them in your head of what you're going to do. Because once you get to your senior year and working on them, you can work with your counselors, you can work with your English teachers to work on those supplements because they are a really big part of the application. Um, and then once you sort of get past, you've sent all your applications in, you're waiting. Um, just as Kristen said again, you're gonna have some rejections, you're gonna have some acceptances. I know there's like a concern, like, what if I don't get accepted anywhere? You definitely, definitely will get accepted to a few places. What I did, a lot of my friends did, what the counselors will recommend is that you do a reach school. You do like a school that is like kind of like an easy, like you will definitely get in here, and then one that's a little bit of both. So a reach school is maybe going to be like a UC or something that's typically a little bit more hard to get into, but you were like, I really like this school. So you give yourself a good like buffer of schools that, if you don't get into these reach schools, you can do something that you still like, but that you've gotten into. Um, and then I'm trying to think what else? Oh, I know there were some questions about GPA. I will say, and I think this is like a little bit, this is like good to know. So my freshman year, I had like a pretty good GPA, but it was only freshman year. So I did pretty well my freshman year. And then at the end of my freshman year, I got pretty sick with a chronic illness, and that's affected me all throughout high school. So unfortunately, that has just affected like grades and GPA. And I found that I didn't have the GPA that I probably would have if I had not gotten sick. But despite that, I still got in to a lot of good schools that I really liked. I haven't decided where I'm going to go to university yet. I just got back from Oregon this weekend visiting schools. So I think I'm going to have my choice by the end of the week. But just if you are not able to get a GPA that a school necessarily says on their website, this is the GPA we take, there is wiggle room there. Because again, I did not get the GPA that I hoped for due to these sort of unforeseen circumstances. And again, I still got into a lot of schools that I was very happy with. I'm going to university next year, so it all worked out. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Eloise. Declan, I'm going to pass it over to you. If you can tell us your story a little bit.
Hi, I'm Declan. I'm a freshman right now at UC Santa Cruz, and I'm studying political science here, and I really like it so far. So yeah, when I was applying to college last year, I ended up only applying to about 10 schools. It was a good mix of reaches, safeties, and target schools. Um, all in all, I think I applied to about 10 in the end. And I got rejected from the majority of them, like most people I know did. But I got into enough places that I feel happy. I applied to three UCs, Santa Cruz obviously being one of them, and the other two being Santa Barbara and San Diego. I got rejected from both Santa Barbara and San Diego, and I was waitlisted here at Santa Cruz and then eventually accepted. I was also accepted to Oregon, and then American University and George Washington University, both in DC, because of the political science major largely. And then some of the other schools I was rejected from included University of Washington, Northeastern, um, Maryland, and I'm forgetting what the other schools I applied to were off the top of my head. I had about a 3.6 GPA throughout high school, which was fairly consistent. Mostly A's and B's. I think freshman year I maybe had a C or two. But definitely went up since then. It didn't have any more. I took 5 total AP classes. I did pretty good on most of my AP exams. And the AP classes were APUSH, which is United States History, AP Government, AP Environmental Science, English Language, and then also English Literature. My extracurriculars at school, I played volleyball for 4 years. 3 of them were on varsity, 1 was JV. And then my senior year, I was a captain of the team. I played 1 year of varsity soccer. I did ASB for 1 year, the student body, for those of you who don't know. And held the commissioner of athletics role. I was also a part of speech and debate for a year and the yearbook for a year, which I think is all I did within school. There might be more that I forgot. And then for outside of school, I played club volleyball for a few years. I did a lot of volunteering stuff, mostly with friends, which actually made it really fun to do, and I highly recommend doing. And then one of my other big things I did was I spent a week during the summer volunteering at a youth camp on Catalina Island with the YMCA. So that was pretty much that was the bulk of my application stuff right there. Forgetting 1, 2 things.
We're slightly losing you, Declan. So I'm going to pause and go over to Donovan. Hopefully you can hear me. If you want to turn your, yeah.
And now I'm through my.
Oh, hey, Declan, maybe turn your screen off, your video off. Okay, I'm going to go over to Donovan. Milroy, who is currently at UCLA, and we'll get back to Declan later.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Donovan. I am a junior here at UCLA. I'm a political science major as well, with a minor in education. And my path was a little different. I graduated from South Pass 3 years ago in 2021. I got into a couple schools on the West Coast that I really enjoyed. Oregon, Washington, Santa Cruz. Similarly, as a poli-sci major, some schools in DC. But I just didn't feel that any of them were the right fit. I didn't feel that I really fell in love with any of them, and I didn't feel like I could justify the price point of them with how much I felt I would fit in there, and with the campus culture. And I really didn't want to go to PCC at first. You know, they post everything in Tiger. You don't want to be the guy without like a cool logo on chalk day. But in the end, it's turned out to be the best decision I could have ever made in my life, ever, like point blank. I had seen older classmates go the community college route and post about it on Instagram. And so when I was making my college decision, I reached out to them, and it really calmed my nerves because they basically kind of gave me, like I'm doing here, a little rundown of what they did and made it so that they basically told me if they can do it, I can do it. And I want to be here today telling all of you guys that if I can do it, you can do it. Because it really is scary at first. You're basically gambling on yourself. You're delaying this decision to go to a 4-year. And that is terrifying. It's seriously scary. And after a ton of debate, I decided on PCC. my first semester there, I was super angry and anxious about my decision. I hated it. I think a lot of this was from the fact that I saw a lot of other people posting on Instagram, like moving into college and going to their first football game. And I realized I wasn't getting that. But I wouldn't trade any of my time at PCC for the world. I wouldn't have been able to do this without the resources I learned about. Going to PCC and transferring is an incredibly overcomplicated process, it feels like a lot of the time. But it doesn't have to be. And that's the thing that changed my entire trajectory while I was at PCC. You basically feel like you only have a year and a half because you have your freshman year, the summer, and then you have about till November to get your application in. So it's not even like you have the full 2 years there to get involved. But I learned very fast that it's so incredibly important to get involved, not just for your applications, but also to make your time at PCC memorable. At PCC, I had amazing professors that cared so deeply about their students and their classes. I took everything from my major required courses and the I Get To requirements to a wine tasting class with all my friends when we kind of had like a free spot, which was the absolute best. Tuesdays 3 to 5 was some of my favorite times there. But overall, I was challenged. I learned, I grew, I ran for student government, and I got involved with advocacy. I gained leadership. I even got paid doing it. Those people inspired me to be better. Some of the highest achievers I know came from PCC and I met at community college. They pushed me to get an internship, to hold down a part-time job. And I loved my time there more than anything. I became closer with people I graduated South Pass with, which was awesome. We were all going through this similar shared experience. And I met so many new people. I graduated with 2 associate's degrees with Latin honors and Dean's honors. Out of South Pass, I had about a 3.5. When I graduated PCC, I had a 4.0. And the pride and love that I have for PCC, I thought I would never have. But here I am today, crediting basically my entire life and story to it. I got into every UC that I applied to: Santa Barbara, Berkeley, LA, many others, USC. I can tell you with assurance, my South Pass education prepared me for PCC, and PCC prepared me for UCLA. Don't let them think that 2 years at either school is too little to get involved. At PCC, I was involved in the honors program, student government, and here I continued my involvement in student government. I'm involved in research, and I also am playing intramural sports. There's enough time for everything, and there really is a lot of positives to going to PCC beyond how much it saves you money, and also just how much it helps you grow as a person. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Such a great story. Thank you for being so honest and about everything. In the chat, you might have seen, I put some resources. Donovan came up with a PDF for us of resources that he used at PCC that helped with his transfer to UCLA and his ability to get into all those amazing schools when he applied from PCC. So please take a look at that. I will also have that on the YouTube page when I send out the YouTube link. I was going to go back to Declan, but I think his Wi-Fi is still bugging a little bit. So I'm going to move on to Shauna, our parent in residence.
All right. Hey, everyone. I am the parent of a UCLA freshman and SPHS Junior. So I am both through the process and going right back into it. So what I did, I'm going to ask Kristen if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen. Also, I started my timer for 5 minutes. This could take me a little while to get through this this timeline and FAQ I put together, but basically, Kristen's going to put the link to it in the chat so that you can go through it at your leisure. I'll just maybe give you a few highlights right now. Basically, what I did is I took a lot of the resources that are at the College Essay Guy College Application Hub. So this is College Essay Guy is someone who is really into the whole college application and essay process. And he's got tons and tons of resources that are online and free. He also has some resources that you can sign up for and pay for. He has some pay-as-you-go options, which I've also taken advantage of. But what I wanted to try to do just for my kids next round and for all of you and folks going through this process for the first time is just try to curate these resources that are out there for free and put them into some kind of, I don't know, organized format that hopefully wouldn't be too stressful. My sort of solution to helping people get through this process, which at the beginning can seem so daunting, is to just, look at it like a process you got to go through beginning to end, and you got steps along the way. And as long as you know what those steps are, I found that I was just a lot less stressed when I knew what was coming. So hopefully this will be helpful to you, and you can just sort of take it one step at a time and not feel too overwhelmed all at once. But from the very top of it, there's a timeline that I linked to that the college essay guy has for grades 9 through 12. So if there are parents of 9th graders, 10th graders, there's a timeline in there for you. I just excerpted for this basically junior and senior, junior year and then senior fall, which is kind of where the action is with regard to the college applications. And just to highlight a few things that are things that I learned from the process, I learned that if you don't sign up for the SAT. I didn't sign, my kids didn't sign up for the ACT. I had both kids wanting to, or at least one kid wanting to take the SAT. So when we went to go register, there were like no spots available at local testing sites because we waited so long. It turns out they released those dates in the summer. So at some point over this coming summer, they will release dates for all next year. So if you're able to get a testing spot this summer, I highly encourage it, because if you decide to cancel, you can always get a partial refund. If you wait like I did until the last minute, you could end up driving 50 to 100 miles to the nearest testing site available at that time. I'd also strongly suggest making a college-only email address. This of course, is for your student, that your student make a college-only email address. So all the college info goes to that one place, including when you might sign up for college tours and the student gives their email address. It's really nice that they don't mind sharing that access to that account with you. You can go ahead and then check all the information if you're into that for the college tours that you and your student might sign up for. And then I just hyperlinked to all kinds of information that I thought was helpful, like, should my child take the SAT, ACT, or should we, apply to test optional schools only? So those are hyperlinked there. The first probably thing coming up for juniors, the counselors are going to talk to the students on, I think, May 1st during late start, but about how to go about requesting letters of recommendations from teachers. This kind of snuck up on us the first time. Sort of didn't realize that a lot of students were actually asking their teachers after AP exams in May of junior year. So if you have teachers, if your students have teachers in mind, it's a good idea maybe to see about asking them this May. And then junior summer, I think might be a good time to start working on essays. And I have to say that Ms. Montoya is so awesome. She is leading a summer workshop on how to write the college essay. And it's through SPEF. It's through SPEF Summer School. I think it's maybe 9 days, so kind of 2 weeks minus a day. It's going to be a couple of weeks in June. You can find information for that on the SPEF website. And I'm running out of time, so I'll just say that some links that I did find helpful that are linked under junior summer. There's a link where it says school-specific supplemental essays. And I have to say this was so helpful because the schools have lots of different types of questions they ask, and it was really tough to kind of think about how to strategize those, but in a time-efficient manner. So those are linked under school-specific supplemental essays. One of the questions I saw that was asked ahead of time was about college majors, whether schools are selecting by college majors. And if you go under these really helpful links, you can just scroll down to the FAQ. And in the FAQ, there are some questions about, what about my applying to the UCs and Cal States? And you can go under the UC admissions factors link there. You can scroll down to see the selection process by campus, and that will give you information on whether those UCs in particular select by college major. So I'm going to end there. That was really just a little bit because I wanted to keep my remarks to 5 minutes, and I'm happy to answer any questions later. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So now we're going to turn it over to Mariah and Patty, who are the experts. They are out here of their own free will, but they also are there for you if you ever want to hire someone to help you. I know some parents are like, I'm doing this with my kid. And some parents are like, I absolutely cannot do this with my child. I get both perspectives. Totally. There's some things we want to keep a good relationship with our kid, especially when they're leaving. And so this might break it. Or you just, I have friends who didn't grow up in this country and they have no idea what the US college system is like. And I have to say it's changed so much since I went 30 years ago that it's helpful to have someone to bring you along. Mariah and Patty, thank you.
Thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I'll start, and my name's Mariah. I am a college counselor at Mosaic College Prep, and I'm also the director of communications and programming for Mosaic College Prep. And we're joined by our other fabulous counselor, Patty, this evening. And once I finish my little spiel, Patty, please share anything that I've left out or that you think is relevant. It's so fun to be back with SPHS. Guys are great. We always have so much fun speaking to your community. And I just really love all of the information that's been shared tonight. And I loved that beautiful story about the community college transfer process, because the truth is, it really is a great option. I think over the years, more and more students are seeing that. And sometimes in this college obsessed culture, we carry a little bit of stigma about going alternative paths. And the truth is, alternative paths are sometimes the best paths you can take. So thanks for sharing that. Thanks for sharing all those resources. This is great stuff. So a few things that I heard that I just want to echo. Start early is a great piece of advice. And it doesn't quite hit until it hits, but I promise you, your future self will be tremendously relieved and grateful if you start thinking about your college essay, start thinking about schools that you might want to apply to. If you're a junior now would be a great time to start doing that. Another thing that I just want to share is you're going to be hearing, and you've heard from a lot of students and parents' own unique perspectives, and they're great and valid and wonderful. I want to discourage anybody from hearing like, oh, I've heard of GPA or extracurriculars, and because I have those, that means I can get into the school. I wish I could tell you the process was that straightforward. It just isn't. There is such a level of subjectivity, of mystery, and of changing circumstances within each year, coupled with the fact that we don't know the institutional circumstances or what they're looking for, what needs they need to meet on the admissions end of each individual institution as they change every year. So keep an open mind. Another thing I heard that I want to talk about is when you're looking at UCs, I'm sure anecdotally you've experienced it feels a little bit less predictable which UC students might be getting into. We really like to tell our families to see UCs as a category unto themselves. We don't even really loop them into traditional reaches, matches, or SAFERs. We kind of categorize reaches, matches, and SAFERs within the UCs as a separate entity as they've become increasingly unpredictable. A story that we love to share about this is we had a student a year back who was accepted by UC Berkeley, Penn, and Harvard, but was waitlisted at UC San Diego and UC Santa Barbara. Now, just looking at the numbers, a student, you wouldn't predict those outcomes for a student, but that's the way that these processes are going more and more. Great point about signing up for SATs and ACTs early. In the past couple of years, we've had a lot of trouble having seats in the Los Angeles area for those testing locations, so definitely look into that. Otherwise, we're really just here to support you and your questions and your community. At the end of this conversation, we'll send out a link. So if you want to give us your information or have us reach out to you with more information about our offerings, we're happy to do that. But we're also happy and hope that you get so much of what you need from this conversation tonight. And like Kristen said, and I'll wrap up and pass the baton, every family is different. Some families function really well going through this together, and that can be a really bonding, awesome way to get to know your child and for your child to hear more about your experience. And if you're anything like me, when I was applying to college, it is absolutely not the way to go. And my family would totally battle it out over every single comma, semicolon, period, and every essay, because we all had a lot of opinions. So at Mosaic, we really help families and students demystify the process and keep it as stress-free as possible. So we're happy to support you if that's something you'd like as well. Patty, do you want to share a little bit about your perspective?
Sure. First of all, I'll give you a little bit of information about myself. So I am a local parent. I have two daughters who are done with college, yes. I made it through 8 years of paying for college in a row. My eldest graduated from Northeastern in Boston, and my youngest from UCI, very different students. The eldest is a social worker and did a traditional high school up at Crescenta Valley High School. My youngest did LACHSA, the LA County High School for the Arts. And so she was looking at an arts admissions as well as a business degree at UCI. So I learned a lot about, although I had done college admissions and financial aid for over 35 years, I learned a lot about the audition process and how different it was than the regular admissions track and how they played hand in hand, even though I had done this most of my life. I mentioned I also have a background in financial aid. And I think it's a great time to start having conversations about financial aid and about how much you as a family feel comfortable in paying for college. Because one of the hardest discussions is you've worked really, really hard as a student and you've gone into these very elite institutions, and some of them are over $90,000 for this year. And then your parents say, I can't do that. We don't qualify for aid and we can't write that check and we're not sure how to do this. I think those are great discussions to have and learning about the financial aid process. And there's some additional things I'll probably send off to you to look at and kind of figuring out how that financial aid process works, as well as looking for scholarships early. There are scholarships that actually start at the end of your junior year, competitions for some of the really big scholarships like Coca-Cola and the Gates Millennial actually will start in just a few months. They'll open those applications for those big ones. So keep that in mind. And a community college is a great opportunity. You can't beat the cost of a California community college and saving 2 years to maybe go to that dream school. Because you're not spending 4 years of your money on that. So there are great opportunities throughout there, but have that financial discussion as well, because if you're only willing to pay for what the equivalent is at a UC education, it's good to know that before your child has 9 out of their 10 applications to schools that are over 90,000. So that's my one piece of advice there. Mariah and I work together helping students through this process. I also am a former transfer director over at Occidental College. So I know PCC and its great reputation and so on. And I'm also, as I mentioned, a former director of financial aid. So I know how that kind of falls into the prospects with students as well. So feel free to, and I also did international admissions, so I can talk about that for any of our families who need that. So.
Fantastic. I feel like we could talk for like 5 hours, but there's so much to go over with college, I know. So I did get a few questions in the chat. I also got a bunch of questions before we started. So I'm just going to start going through some of the questions. A few quick ones to the students I'd like to ask you. Start with Eloise and then to Declan and then to Donovan. Did each of you submit or take SATs or ACTs? Eloise.
Sorry, I wasn't working for a second. Yeah, I actually wanted to mention this. So I am not a very good test taker. And I looked at schools ahead, and all of the schools that I just happened to like did not require SATs or ACTs, and some of them actually refused them. So I did not end up, and I spoke to my counselor about this prior to doing this, but I didn't actually end up taking the SAT or ACT because my counselor recommended to me that he said if you know you're not a great test taker, I would spend the time you would have spent studying for those tests working on your essay. And I did that, and I worked on my essay for a long time instead of doing that, and I got like emails from admissions counselors saying that they really liked my essay. I got one from a school that I didn't even get into, and they just emailed me to tell me they liked the essay. So I'm like, if you are not a test taking person, there is no shame in not taking the test. I knew a few people. I was like one of the only ones who did not take any of them. And I was at first I was a little bit embarrassed about it, but now I'm like, that was not right for me. And I would have spent that money and time doing something that I might not have done very well in, when I could have done something that was I knew would have fit me more.
Great, thank you. Declan, what did you do with SATs or ACTs?
Yeah, so I took the SAT. I never took the ACT. My one SAT I took, I walked out of it knowing that I didn't do great, and knowing that I probably could have prepared myself more for it. Um, Definitely spending my third year of high school, I took statistics as a junior. And I think if I had taken maybe a different math class, it might have helped me a little bit more for the SAT, because it would have been a little bit.
Hold on, I'm going to turn his camera off. Oh, did he leave? Yep, you did bug Declan. So since I'm his mom, I'm just going to continue that. He did take the SATs the one time, and then he didn't end up submitting any of them because they were okay. And he decided in the end, the schools he was applying to didn't need them really. And they were all test optional or didn't want them. So he didn't end up turning them in. So Donovan, what about you?
Yeah, similar to everyone else, graduated in 2021, so like that, kind of sort of near the middle of COVID. Everywhere went test optional or test blind. I never took it. I didn't take it as a transfer applicant, which I don't know if that's common or not. I didn't meet anyone in personal experience who had taken it, just because of kind of how it all tracked with everyone. But yeah, same thing.
Awesome. And then also, so Eloise, I'll start back with you. Letters of recommendation, that got brought up. When did you ask for letters of recommendation, and was it easy? I know there was a comment already in the chat asking a question about South Pasadena and if they're ever going to develop a policy about teachers replying to requests for letters of recommendation. I'm not in administration. I wish I could answer that question. I would encourage you to email the administration over and over, have your friends email so that they hear that it's a big problem, because I think what happens is people go through it and then they kind of let it go because they're done and they're like, fine, I'm done. But I have heard of people really having problems getting letters of rec from teachers that are the ones they need. And depending on what you are applying for, you might need if you're comp sci, you might need an English, or if you're some science thing, you might need a science, and you want to get it from the right person. So Eloise, how did it go for you?
Okay, so I did letters of rec a little bit late. Like I did with all this stuff. Again, would not recommend it. I think it's definitely one of those things that, as everybody said, you need to do as early as possible. I started reaching out to people around like October, and it wasn't, I mean, that was a little later than everybody else, but I had no issues with it. About like kind of like what the teachers will do. I got one letter of rec from a science teacher, from a chemistry teacher. I really struggled in chemistry, but by the end of the year, I actually did pretty well in that class. I got like a high B, which I mean, a lot of my friends did better, but I'm not a math girl, so I was like happy with that. And to me, it was really important that I got this letter from this teacher because he really helped me. I'd known him the year prior. He helped me a lot. And so I went to him, and his policy is very different than the other teachers. He will kind of just, if you ask for a letter of rec, he'll kind of just get it done. But then the other teacher I asked, she had a deadline, which is what you will find with most of the teachers. They will say, this is my deadline. If you need it for this date, you tell me by this time. And if you don't, then there's nothing I can do about it. Um, I mean, I'm just a student, so I don't know if the school will do anything about it, but I think the teachers have, from my understanding and one of my friends have done, I think the teachers have like different things. Some teachers will take all of them, some teachers do first come first serve. I've never met any teachers that just do random. They've only, I mean, there might be some, I'm not sure, but they've all, for me and for other people I've seen, done first come first serve. So just like other people were saying, if you are doing a science major or a certain major and you need a certain letter of recommendation from this teacher, then I would say just do it early. Start talking to them now. If you have a teacher now, there is no harm in just putting it on their radar, and just saying like, oh, I'm kind of thinking about, would you mind doing this? And they will write you down and just kind of make sure that you're in their line of sight. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. We're going to have Declan keep his camera off because clearly being in the woods at Santa Cruz isn't working so well. So, but Declan, how about you? How did it go with you for letters of recommendation?
Yeah, so for all of my schools, I ended up really only needing one letter of recommendation. There was more that were optional, but I didn't end up using those. I was able to get mine. I secured it around the end of my junior year, just after I had taken my AP tests. And I was really lucky to be able to get it from my AP US history teacher, Mr. Valcorza. Seeing as I was applying with political science as my major, it lined up really well. Um, he did a lottery system, I believe, with a limited amount of applicants. But I don't think that's the most common method of choosing letters of recommendation. Um, I can't really speak to getting multiple in the later section, but I know I had friends who did, and I know a lot of them really struggled with it because a lot of these teachers, they don't really, a lot of them don't want to be writing 10s and 20 and 30 letters of recommendation that they have to do on their own time because if they're writing that many, they feel like they can't be putting in quality work with as many of them. So it definitely is a big problem that I think the school should address, but it's one of those things that's very difficult to address.
Thanks, Declan. Donovan, can you, since we've heard a little bit about the high school, can you talk about letters of rec for transfer process? Do you need those too? I don't know how that works.
Yeah, the only school that I applied to that was a private was USC, and they were letter of rec optional. I got it from my looser restrictions for letters of rec as a transfer. UCs don't take them. That's normally the route that a lot of people go, California Community College to UC or CSU. So that route, you're not necessarily needing them. For my private, I got it from a summer internship that I had, which was a little different. You in community college only have pretty much a semester with the teacher, and even then, it has to be like basically a semester. You have maybe 2.5 semesters to get that letter of rec because you got to be putting in the application in November. So for a lot of my friends, it was really important that they kind of chose a class that they would be extra, you would participate a ton in. You'd go to the office hours. Going to office hours is huge to build a connection. Your classes can range from like 15 kids to 100 something at PCC. So going to office hours is huge if you have a specific teacher that you want, but that's pretty much it. It's creating and forging a connection with a professor. That's a little bit different than South Pass, where you are just with them for the year, or like Declan, I was with Miss Valcorza for 2 years, so it like was very easy to decide. But there it's a little bit, you get to put in your own effort, go out and get the letter of recommendation. A lot of people are happy to do it, and if you're applying to a private, it's a great resource to add to your application.
If
The other thing,
May,
Okay.
Kristen, I just want
Yeah.
to go back to two things that were said here. So one thing was when we first were talking about SAT and ACTs, I don't know how many parents in the chat have younger students or early high school students. I would really encourage you to look up the changing testing policies for each institution. UCs and Cal States are going to remain test blind, so they will not look at your standardized test scores, even if you send them. But many schools are rolling out things like in 2020 for the class of 2027 or 2026 or 2028 will no longer be test optional. So it's just something to think about in advance. Another thing that I would say is much like Eloise shared, some students just are not test takers, and that is perfectly okay. And if you think you're on the fence, there's no harm in taking the test and then deciding if they don't go the way that you want them to go. Sorry, if the tests don't go the way you'd like them to go, then you can make a decision and decide, you know what, I'm really going to apply to test optionals. This wasn't for me. Or you might surprise yourself and have scores where you're above the mid 50th percentile, and that can only be an asset to your application. As far as letters of recommendation, especially at a larger school, we always recommend students try to get those requests in before the end of junior year, particularly because if there's a really, class favorite teacher who everybody just loves and connect with, that's why teachers like that tend to have to come up with lottery systems or unique things, because so many people want requests or want letters from them. The only reason I might encourage a student to wait until senior year would be if they really had trouble forging relationships with their teachers during junior year. I might encourage that student to start building a rapport with the teacher so that there feels like more of a foundation to write a letter on that basis.
Yeah, and it's way easier. It was hard for Donovan's year for sure, and Declan's because of COVID. They didn't know a lot of their teachers because they were online a lot, so that was really rough. Just to let everybody know, I have gotten a few questions, and I have some from before about the transfer process. I think what I'm going to do is we're going to do another like 5 or 6 minutes of kind of generalized questions, and then I'll spend the last 5 minutes really focusing on that transfer with Donovan and Patty, because they know a lot about that. And while I've got you, Mariah or Patty, one question we have is, does the major you apply to affect your admission? Are some majors more competitive than others based on major? And I'm going to add a little something to that, which is, how do you know which are the competitive majors at that school?
Okay, I'll go ahead and take that. And the answer is it depends. You have to do your research on each of these schools, because there are some places and some programs that it'll be very difficult to get in if you have not gotten in as a freshman to that department. So for instance, I mentioned I have a graduate of UCI, and for that business program, she had some friends that were trying to get into the business program who had 3.8s, 3.9s at UCI in the prerequisite courses and in their overall GPA, that never got into the business program because they had a certain number of spots that were given to freshmen. And now, again, this is just UCI. Every UC is different, but there are some programs that will be harder to get in as a freshman or as a transfer student once you're in the institution, because those spots are filled. So it's kind of a balancing thing. Do you really want to go to this school and you don't care what your major is? Because it really is about, I want my degree in my sweatshirt and the back of my mom's bumper sticker to say this, or is it, that I'm looking for this particular major? And that's why I want to go to that school. So you really have to kind of balance that out. And ask those questions of an institution. Because I said, what I'm seeing more and more, especially majors like engineering and computer science, and often business, you'll find that some of those programs are so impacted that, and they do save spots for students transferring from the community colleges. They have these agreements called articulation agreements that they are saving some spots for these students to coming in as transfer students. So some of those programs are going to be impacted and harder to get into once you're a student. that is at that institution. So
Yeah, thank you. Toby did ask, what if a student doesn't have a decided major? You can still go undecided. I know plenty of kids who have gone undecided. It again depends on the college. I know San Luis Obispo, you pretty much start your degree right when you get there. So you do need to look at the program. That's the hard thing. There's over 4,500 colleges and universities in the United States, and each one has their own way of doing stuff just to make you crazy. So, okay, I want to, we don't have a ton of time to get to 7:30. So I'm going to go back to the students really quickly. And if you could just give me a quick down and dirty, what's kind of the best thing you think you did? Like the thing you're like, oh, I'm so glad I did that when I applied. And what's the one thing you're like, I really should have done that? Eloise, can you start?
Yeah, I think one of the best things I did was I spoke a lot with my counselor. My counselor that I did have left. She retired right as I began my senior year, and I was really, really worried about getting that letter of rec. So I, from the beginning of the school year, spent a lot of time with my counselor. I talked to him. I told him all about me, what I like. I went to him to read all my essays I wrote for university. Any questions I had, any thoughts I had, I spoke to him a lot. And he was really wonderful. They're all really wonderful. I would definitely recommend reaching out to your counselor because they know what they're doing and they're great. And then just something I spoke about this a lot, but something I would not do is I would give yourself lots of time to do stuff. I would not leave it to the last minute, which usually really isn't like me. But for this, I was just really struggling to get it done. It is, I will say, it's a daunting job to have to sit there and you have to write all these massive essays and these supplements, and you have to type in 4 years worth of grades and all this personal information about yourself and your family and like grandparents and people you don't even know. So just again, I would give yourself lots of time, break it up into chunks. It's not that bad, but it's like daunting, but you guys can all do it. You just got to give yourself the time.
Fantastic. Thanks. Declan, what about you?
I would say the thing that looking back, I appreciate the most is I feel like my friends and I kind of talked about it a lot. And I feel like I had a really good friend group in high school. And I felt like I could trust them all, and I was very close with all of them. And we were all very communicative about our applying to college experience, like colleges that we found out that we really liked, that we didn't know about as much before, and colleges that maybe one of us found something we didn't like about it that we shared with each other. So just kind of going through that process together, I felt was really good. One of the other things we did is kind of for the more boring sections of the Common App, we would just sit down together and do them, like filling out all your extracurriculars and all that random information. We just like talk and hang out while we were doing that, which made it a lot more bearable and enjoyable. And then kind of just agreeing with Eloise on the front of I just did my applications way too late. I think I submitted my UC app that maybe the day before it was due, and wrote all of my PIQs within that week. And I feel that maybe if I had spent more time writing them and editing them and thinking about what else I could talk about with them, maybe that I would have been able to get into other schools. Maybe I wouldn't have been waitlisted at Santa Cruz in the first place. And then even just for the Common App, I somehow did not learn my lesson and then wasted a good probably, I don't know, week of my winter break that I spent sitting down every day writing all of my extra supplemental essays that I really wish I could get back and I spent with my friends and stuff like that. So yeah, just the timing is definitely the biggest thing that I regret about the application process.
Fantastic. Thanks. Donovan, what about you?
Taking advantage of resources earlier on campus. Transferring is a great option. It's also a really hard option that there is like there's a lot of percentages that are scary. Like the amount of people that transfer within 2 years, scary number. But like taking advantage of resources, if I could do that earlier, if I could, find the people that help you navigate the process earlier, it is game changing. Like just their advice. And seriously, it makes you want to start earlier, and it kind of forces you to start earlier. And that was what I would do as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So it is 7:26. I do want to honor everybody's time. I know I'm not getting to every question, but I do want to talk a little bit more about the PCC transfer thing, because what I didn't know, I don't know if you all know, but if you look at the statistics at South Pasadena High School, like 30% of kids go to PCC, which is not what you think when you're hearing all these other things about some of these other kids. And I just think that's unbelievable and awesome and so wonderful. And I want to applaud everybody who does it, because it doesn't feel like it's the norm, but honestly, it's the biggest percentage of students. But like Donovan said, on chalk day, you know, you're like, do I want to put PCC? And you kind of feel a little weird about it. But if we could just celebrate that, because it is such a great option, especially monetarily and clearly to get you to the next step. I mean, it's just so great. I know so many people who've done it. So I do want to ask a couple of transfer questions. Are there any? Are there any drawbacks, Donovan, that you would say that are transferring? I mean, you were really honest, and I love how you were like, you know, in the end, I've found friend groups at both places. Did you end up transferring with friends? Did you feel like you really missed a college experience because you went to PCC? Because I think some people say that, but your experience sounds so great.
Yeah, I absolutely made and kept friends. That's a top bunk. You guys can't see it. He's an international student that I met in student government at PCC. The bottom bunk is another friend from PCC. So I'm rooming with two guys from PCC. I had, I mean, for about a year, I definitely felt like you were missing out on the college experience. And I think a majority of that is just seeing other people live it so vividly. And it's this very big like comparison thing that can really get to you. And it's very discouraging. And that I think is a drawback. Also, a drawback is it's easy to get lost at PCC. It's a big school and transferring is a big process. With the right resources, it's 100% doable. You have to put in the work. It's not like it's not like it's this like cheat code. It's definitely, that's one of the drawbacks, is that it's when you first step on campus, it can feel super daunting and hard to navigate. And that's because until you get your bearings, there it is. And yeah, you definitely feel like you're missing out on the college experience. Joining and getting involved is the most important thing to combat this. 100%. It's literally, I think, one of the only things you can do to combat this. There's like anywhere between 80 to 120 active clubs at PCC any given year. And then there's student government, and there's like recreational classes and classes in hospitality, like wine tasting, where you can truly get kind of like a crazy feel of college at PCC that you have to work hard to seek, and it definitely doesn't live up to, you know, your first game at the Rose Bowl, but it's there for those who seek it.
So do you have to be 21 to do this wine tasting class?
You do not. I was 19 when I started it.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
You obviously spit the wine out, Kristen.
Yeah.
Of course.
I'd also like to add one thing. What you haven't mentioned is you mentioned being part of the honors program at PCC. And what you need to know is that many community colleges have honors programs, and many of them give them incredible opportunities. Everything from, some of them will waive your tuition for the program. Some will have special honors study abroad. So not waiting until your junior year, you can actually do that as part of PCC. There's this incredible program to Italy that PCC has that every time I hear about any student that's gone to this, it's truly life-changing. But also, you know, there are some advantages, and even within admissions, there are special agreements with UCLA and with Berkeley, two of the hardest of the UCs to get into, for students who are in the honors programs. So I want to make a plug about that honors program as well.
Love that. It is 7:31. I am trying to finish up here really quickly. I know Declan needs to go. And Declan, I think if you need to go, I want to thank you for being here. It's all good. I'm going to ask like 2 more questions to Donovan and the PCC stuff. And then we'll get everybody out of here. So really quickly, if it was the application process for high school to college different from the PCC to college, or was that pretty much the same?
It was a little different. So even like the PIQs are different. there's a mandatory question. There's also, I think you do like 4, and there's 4, you have to do 4 out of 8. I remember that being different than high school. I don't remember how, but yeah, part of it is also, it's a literal different process. And part of it is you don't have 4 years of stuff to write about. You have a year and a summer, basically. So that part of it is very different. You're reaching about questions about how you changed your community, stuff like that are truly hard to do if you don't have anything to write about. And that was another reason why getting involved was one of the best things. Like, to have something to write about on your UC application is so helpful. To have something to point to, I feel like it's like underrated as a transfer student. Like, it's not all about grades. And so actually having stuff to write about for the PIQs in a year, it's super hard. It's different than high school. You don't have 4 years to do it, but it's doable, and that part is totally different. As for other aspects of it, there's less supplemental applications, I noticed, and there is a few different questions if there are supplementals, beyond just like the normal one. Still, for almost every private that you apply to, it's going to be like a YS essay though. So there are similarities, a couple differences.
Great. And did you have to put a lot about high school in there, or was it really just about your time at PCC?
From what I heard, and I don't know if Patty, you know more about this than I do, it's a little like, from what I heard, it might be speculation. Like, the further away you are from high school in your application process, the less they care about it. So I heard from some people, like, to not include things from high school in your application. Don't write about stuff from high school. Grades at community college are going to matter more because that's college coursework. They're not trying to like guess if you can handle college coursework. They're seeing if you can handle college coursework. But as for like PIQs and personal statements, from what I heard, is that you're not supposed to include stuff from high school. But
Great.
if anyone else has other information, please.
Oops, sorry. I'm in an office that the lights go on if I don't move around. So if I go like this, it really is. But yes, you're right. Once you have a year's worth of work at a college or university, that's what counts. So for some students that maybe, you kind of spent the first 2 years in high school not quite sure of things and didn't give your all, but now you've discovered your passion in an area and you've decided to go to a community college, that's fantastic. Because when you have a year's worth of work, they really don't go back. They're looking to see, okay, you did take algebra too, but they don't really care kind of they want to see that you passed it, but they don't care whether it was an A or a C. What they're looking at is what you're doing now and how you're preparing yourself for that next major. I think the one thing I would add is you really can't go transfer unless you know what you're going to major in. So that's a little bit different. You can be undeclared from high school and go to a school where they'll let you kind of figure out in their paths to get into some of these programs. But when you're coming from a community college, they want to know, if not what you're going to major in, kind of what department. So you may not have to know what kind of engineering, but you need to know you're applying to engineering. You might not know what you want to do in the social sciences, but you're going to need to apply to that particular, to the social science department.
Fantastic. That's great. Someone made a comment in the comments to me. I just want to point out. So they said applying to colleges, they really thought an internship would have helped their child get in to a school. They were waitlisted at Caltech because they didn't do any internships. And I want to make sure everybody knows that we have an internship program at the high school. Kids can do an internship junior or senior year, or during the summer before junior or senior year. And I don't know when their meeting is, but usually it's at the end of April. So if you're interested, there is a meeting that the teacher does at the end of April. So I'm not sure of the complete website, but I'm sure you can find it from the school website. But SPHS internships, I don't know. Somebody said, was it canceled this year? I never heard that it was canceled. We had them talk about it at the beginning of the school year at our All Things SPHS program. SPEF dropped the summer internship class this summer. Oh, well, that's a bummer. Okay. Thanks for lack of assignments. Okay, you all know more than me. So this is why I love doing a community event, because sometimes you try to know everything and you still can't. So that's a big bummer, but my guess is some of those companies still might give you an internship, whether or not you get credit. You could do something with them. So I bet you could find that still. Okay, it is 7:37. I have two really, really quick questions. One is, and hopefully this is a yes or no, or maybe really quick. Are COVID deferrals still impacting the number of open spots at California universities or any other universities that you know of?
I'll take this one. Actually not. Most of those students at this point have kind of cycled through the process. Those students that had not decided to go to school or had taken a break and switched. What is affecting the UCs in the Cal State since COVID, it has progressed where it's manageable, is there's now more applications from out of state and internationally again. Those went down during the COVID years, of course, because people didn't want to be so far away from home, but they're back up again.
Okay, that's great. And then I'm hoping everybody in the panel can answer this. Declan did have to leave, but one good tip for making the college application process less stressful, if you haven't already mentioned it, if Eloise and Donovan, you did talk about what you would do, which is probably do things earlier and stuff like that. But if anybody else has any tips, do you have anything else, Eloise, that you would say as a tip that would make it less stressful?
Okay, I would maybe say write down what you have to do. If you have like a big daunting list of like this computer screen, I think it was more helpful for me to do bullet points of what I need to do and check them off on a list. I can physically see like what I had to do and then cross it out, and I was like, it's done. So that is actually pretty helpful.
Awesome. Donovan, any other words of advice?
I'd say talk to other people, not necessarily to get their advice. I may not be the best at giving advice, but just talking to other people, because it's all a similar, you're all doing the exact same thing on the same relative timeline. So other people going through the same thing, really helpful.
Thank you. Shauna, sorry we didn't hear much from you, but as a parent, any advice for parents that they could do to help their kid?
Well, I'm with Eloise on making a checklist, simply because I think what's so stressful is it feels very unknown. Everything feels very unknown, like just millions of questions. And then once you realize that it's really a finite set, it's just that you don't know that at the beginning. And so I think taking advantage of these resources that people put into the chat, where you can find the answers to your questions, and then just kind of jot down the answers and try to organize them, maybe by topic or by, timeline, or however it is that you like to organize things. I just find that having all the steps laid out just means you got to do the next step. It doesn't mean that you got to get to step number 50.
Great. Oh, thank you, Toby. There are workshops for internships this week. I knew that would be sometime around then. I knew they were about this time. Mariah, do you have any?
Yeah, I know this is going to sound like really impossible, but at its best, the college application process can be a really beautiful, reflective experience. This might be the first time as a student that you're writing an essay that isn't formulaic and like a traditional scholarly academic essay. It's more narrative and explorative, but this is a really cool opportunity to think about what you value as a human being, what you've done the last 4 years, and who you are, what you add to this world. And if you really just lean into that and try to get into a spirit of curiosity, even though it's a lot, even though it's stressful, it can be a really awesome personal journey.
Great. And Patty?
Well, I'm going to go back to the financial side of things. Every college is required to have something called the financial aid calculator. So as you're looking at schools, you want to find out not only the price, but what you may potentially be paying to attend this school. And also know a number of people have talked about reach schools and safety-ish schools, and I like to call them probable, possible, and reach. That's kind of my terminology. But just know whether you call them safety schools or probable schools, Many schools give merit scholarships, and you might be able to get a big merit scholarship at a school that maybe it's not at your top, but it could mean if you're going to medical school, having the opportunity not to be in debt as an undergraduate. So don't discount some of those probable schools where you might be able to get merit scholarships, because you might have long-range plans that financing that may be part of the issues. So.
Fantastic. I will say what Mariah said. It's a really hard thing for these students to write about themselves because they never have to do that in school. We did not use a college counselor actually. And Declan said to me, he's not here, so I get to talk about him. But he said to me last year, I said, we were having such a frustration doing them together because it's really hard. And I was judging him and what he was doing. And I finally said, do you want to hire someone to help you with this? Because clearly we're getting in arguments. And he goes, no, you know me better than anybody else. You're the one that's going to be able to help get this out of me. And it was like the loveliest thing that ever happened. You know, just one of those really awesome moments in our relationship that was wonderful. So I love that. Back to the internships. It's been back and forth in the chat. It sounds like there's no internships, but I would definitely reach out to the administration if you want to see if there are internships or if they have things. I know Sandra Matson-Fennell, who is one of the teachers, is the one that normally oversees them. So you could email her as well. So just so you know about that. I want to thank you all so much. Eloise, Donovan, Shauna, Mariah, Patty. What an exciting night to do this. I saw 114 people at our max, which is astounding. We never get that many. So it just goes to show how important this is. I cannot thank you enough for being here and for doing that. If anybody has any follow-up questions for any of the participants, please feel free to email me. I'll put my email in the chat right now. And we will be sending out all of the information, the Shauna one that she just posted again, and the information that Donovan gave us. I'll be sending that out through Mr. Eldred at the end of the week. But it's been a great, great chat. So thank you all so much. Have a great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Have a good evening.
Thanks. Here's my email. If anybody wants to take that down, you can email me and I can forward messages to anybody and ask any questions to anyone who you have questions for.